East Podcast, WATP.
He's back. He's back from vacation. He takes a few months off in the summertime these days, and then he comes back after Labor Day with his big show. And my thought is, Howard's been tedious for a while. I'd use the word slog. There are times when I'm listening to Howard, I'm like, this is a slog. But when he comes back, it's going to be great because he's got all these stories and all this information. The whole team's been working all summer without him to put together a great show. And so I was very excited. Adam, you listened to this episode. What do you think? Are you excited that he was back with all this new content for us?
I had a lot of mixed feelings. It was a lot of confusion. I'm having trouble figuring out exactly what kind of show he's trying to do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It reminds me of like when you go see Willie Nelson now, and it's so amazing that Willie can still do it, and we're all applauding that. It's like, wow, he's still doing it. I don't know how it happens, but we don't go see Willie daily and for 4 hours every morning. You know, there's moments where he's making fun of Gary, and I'm like, God, there it is. There's that thing, and they're doing it, and I'm having this feeling, and we're driving across the bridge, and I'm like, this is taking me back. This is getting me through this drive. But
yes,
what used to be a interstitial 30-second thing in between bits is now the bit and extended for like an hour, and it becomes very slow and clearly very scripted.
And yes, very scripted. That's a great point. So I want to get into some of the different segments in here, but I'll just point out, I actually thought, because I've said this before, when I review Howard Stern, it's the hardest work I do on this show because it's very slow. And the way Howard talks now is there's no sense of urgency. It's like, I just need to fulfill this contract, which means 3.5 hours of content. But I actually thought that this episode was better. It was paced better. He was moving a little bit. It felt like the whole staff had some energy. All right, we're back on the air again. And I give him credit for that. Now, we're going to get into the reasons why it was a slog. I think part of it is because I'm so used to listening to podcasts now. I mean, I'm a huge Howard guy. I assume you are too, Adam. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that Howard Stern is what introduced me to this world. And now it's evolved so much that there aren't people who need to fill 4 hours for someone's morning commute anymore. And so there's no reason to do a 4-hour show. And Howard would be much better if it's like, just do an hour.
That's why we do a 3-hour show.
I know, we do way too long. I've been saying this. How many years have I been saying, Chris, we got to cut down the length?
All right, let's add another show in the week.
I know, that was the point. So they wouldn't be so long. Wednesday's supposed to be quick, get to the point, move on. Anyway. So I want to start off with talking about, I talked about this with Drew Lane yesterday, if anyone caught me on his show. But I think this is worth discussing because Howard actually did something over his summer vacation. He was not happy about it, but he did it. He was a guest on SmartLess, the show featuring Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and that other guy. And at this show, they performed at Stephen Talkhouse on, I think that's near Howard's house, if I'm not mistaken. I think they had to put it in a venue that Howard could get to very easily. So they're explaining that there's 60 people in attendance to watch Howard on SmartLess. And Gary's job is still to kiss Howard's ass.
Jimmy Fallon, Bradley Cooper, John Hamm.
Yeah, they were in the
George
audience.
Stephanopoulos. There were a lot of people there. Andy Cohen.
That must be a pretty important show for all those guys to be sitting in their audience.
No, they were there for you.
Really?
I'm telling you, every one of those people came to see you.
I don't know if that's true because SmartLess is a very popular show and those guys are very popular in Hollywood. Yeah. So they have a lot of celebrity friends that would maybe go to something like that. I don't know, Adam. Did you think that was odd that Gary had to say, like, no, all of them were there for you, Howard? You're the greatest.
I interviewed all of them.
Right.
These events happen at Stephen Talkhouse all the time. It's the only venue in the Hamptons that can host music. So It's very small. It only holds 60 people. Every celebrity goes to every show there.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know
like
about this venue.
A famous paparazzi spot. Because it's the only venue in town.
Okay. Because Drew was asking me, he's like, why would they do a show that only holds 60 people? They could have sold out a theater with 3,000, 5,000 people for this event. Like, yeah, they could have.
I think they were trying to keep it podcast intimate, and that's a small venue for big names like that. And
Okay.
of course, it's in the Hamptons. They know everyone will be polite.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense now. So Howard's confused and Robin's out of it. They don't understand what the media world has evolved into.
I didn't know there was an audience. These guys had me on their podcast, and they go, "Oh, there's an audience," and I go, "Why would you have an audience at a radio show? I mean, doesn't it kind of break the intimacy?"
Howard, this is
Yeah,
how I could.
podcast is supposed to be in somebody's living room or their spare
in my
bedroom.
mind.
It's not supposed to have an
Howard.
audience.
Robin's got it all figured
Robin
out.
still got it.
Yeah, she's got it all figured out. If you do a podcast out of your spare bedroom, that's where podcasting happens. She has no idea. I mean, these are shows that are getting these huge deals. Kill Tony is an arena show now. These people have no idea what's going on with podcasting. Why would you do it in front of an audience? Well, because there's a whole audience of people who will come out to see that. I went and saw My Dad Wrote a Porno at a nice theater in Manhattan. And those guys were just on tour. They just tour. I mean, a lot of these podcasts are doing this now. They just tour with their show. Howard has always said he doesn't do podcasts. He doesn't get it. He thinks that these people haven't paid their dues. He doesn't understand why people would listen to podcasts because the host of the show didn't even do morning drive in Vancouver. So why would you even listen to this? And he's still confused about this.
I don't know. I'm sitting at home really happy that I have, a summer break. And I was like, oh, this is so fucking awesome. I don't think in my entire working life I've ever experienced such joy. And so I get the call. First, I got a call from Jimmy Kimmel telling me, you're friends with Jason Bateman and Will Arnett. Those guys want you on the podcast. Why aren't you going on? I go, Jimmy, I don't do any podcasts. He goes, you should really change your mind about that. These guys want you on their podcast. I go, yeah, no offense. But I really don't want to do a podcast. I like those guys. Don't get me wrong. And, everyone listens to their podcast. I go, okay, but, I still don't want to be on a podcast.
Now, there's two things going on here. First, it's Howard's ego. He's been rallying against podcasts. He hates Joe Rogan. He doesn't want to be on a podcast. But two, he's on vacation. He doesn't want to do anything ever anyway, let alone in the middle of August. When he's on
And a
his
summer
vacation.
break for him is summer, all 3 months.
Yes, correct. He doesn't do anything. There's no working to be done. So the fact that Jason Bateman couldn't get him on the phone to ask him to come on the show, or Will Arnett, those guys have done Howard show many times. They're all friendly. But for some reason, Jimmy Kimmel had to jump in to get his buddy Howard to do this show.
You know the real reason he did it. And
Why is that?
It came out later on. He said it very fast, and it really did kind of hurt. The only reason he did it is because SmartLess is on Sirius, and Sirius agreed to make this one of his episodes. So in exchange for not having to go to work for one more day, he did the SmartLess podcast.
I have that clip. This is crazy
Okay.
right here. Check this out. So
couldn't believe it.
Howard was not going to do this. And I think just the word podcast turns him off because everything else about this, you'd be like, no, these are giant celebrities. This is a big deal. Of course you're going to do this show. And he didn't even know at the time that SiriusXM had just acquired, or whatever the word would be, SmartLess for $100 million, which he should know that. He's worked for that company for quite a while. I think he owns a lot of stock.
Yeah, he's got time on his hands to read the news.
Yes. So for some reason he didn't know that. That's why Jimmy Kimmel's like, dude, you should really do this. And so this is the reason why he ended up doing the show.
Hey, we want Howard to be on this podcast. Can you do us a favor? And I was like, oh, come on, man. It's my summer vacation. And then they did say that it would count as one of my shows. And I went, okay, I'm in.
So this is nuts. So Sirius finally is just like, Howard, we really need you to do this. We're trying to make a big deal out of everything we got going on here. So I'll tell you what, we'll make it one of the episodes of your show. And when I heard that, I went, oh, that's interesting, because how much does Howard get paid per episode? Who would know the answer to that? My friend Monique from Radio Gunk. So I reached out to her. I said, Monique, have you calculated how much Howard makes per episode? She has it down to the minute. Mm-hmm. So I decided to extrapolate that. And she thinks that Howard makes $45 million per year. Now, a lot of people think it's 90 million. I don't know that there's an official thing out there. But let's say he makes $45 million a year. He puts out 75 episodes a year. That works out to $600,000 per episode. Now, if he makes $90 million per year, which could be true, that's $1.2 million per episode. If that's the case, either way, is this the first time the guest on the show is getting paid more than the host who hosts the show to do it? Has there ever been another example of that, Adam? You're in Hollywood. You know how this works.
It's unprecedented. And it's only because he's, more a part of the company there. He just wants to support the company brand. Can you imagine, Carl, if I invited you to something that you didn't want to go to? Like, hey, man, want to come see my one-man show? And you're like, I really don't. And I'm like, well, you don't have to do one episode of WATP. I'm in.
All right. Yeah, cool. And also, for Howard, this is a great trade-off. Now, he gets to do his regular show from his basement, so there's that. But zero prep. Show up. It's only an hour. You're not hosting. You just got to sit there. And I actually haven't listened to the episode. I probably should have. I probably will at some point. Have you heard Howard on SmartLess?
I have not.
Because they talk about at a certain point, Jimmy Fallon gets brought up on stage, and Howard's like, okay, you got Jimmy now. I'm out of here. Howard's trying to get away from the show.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But I think one of the reasons why Howard hates saying yes to this is because it opens up an opportunity for all the other podcasts. He's like, Howard, you should probably come on my show. And of course, that's what happened.
What's his name asked me to be on his podcast right after these guys did. And he supposedly got a real popular podcast.
What's his name?
Dax?
Dax Shepard.
Yeah,
and he has a popular podcast. And I was like, and I had to tell Dax no. And I know Dax. I've known him for years.
That's really funny. Of course, Dax would reach out. Oh, you're doing SmartLess? Well, you got to do my show. Dax used to have a very popular show. I don't think it's that popular anymore. Do you hear anyone talking about Dax's show, Adam?
I assumed he was talking about Mark Maron.
Well, at first when he said someone else reached out to me, I was thinking Rogan, Maron. I mean, there's a big list now of people. But yeah, it was Dax, because him and Dax have had a relationship for quite some time. I think it's based on Dax's wife. Dax's entire life is based on who he married, so I think that's how he has friends as well. So Jimmy calls him up, says, dude, you got to do this podcast. It's very popular. People enjoy it. And he had to explain to him why it would make sense for him to do this.
But I don't even understand the deal. The podcast still is available everywhere else, but SiriusXM has it. So I said, well, if you can get it everywhere else, then how is that exclusive? I started I was like, well, I don't understand.
You're trying to analyze the deal.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of money. They had something like $100 million mentioned in the paper, and then people were like, no. They just get part of the advertising. They can make that kind of money if they sell. I go, so is it $100 million or not? Those guys, which gets me crazy because I spent that entire career in radio for nothing. I should have just been broadcasting out of my house all this time.
This drives Howard crazy, which all the therapy he's gone to, the fact that he can't just be happy for other people who are successful, he's wildly successful. When you bring up radio, he's one of the first three names anyone would say. He's connected to it, to the medium. And he's still upset that giant celebrities like Will Arnett are successful at this thing that he does and making a lot of money at it. Get over it. Okay, I get it. You had a tough time, you had a tough go in all these small markets and worked your way up and got hired in New York and got on WNBC, and that was a big deal for you. But that's a long time ago. Let's move on. Why are you still angry about that?
And why is he choosing to cosplay as a poor person who doesn't understand business? Like, he's feigning ignorance. He knows what's going on. He understands it's similar to his deal.
Yes.
He gets a certain amount of money. Does he get all of it? How much goes to the show? We don't quite know. Is it 100 million? Is it 45? It's somewhere in there. He knows this is a similar bit going on with these people. I don't know why he's cosplaying like this. If he was just honest and talked about being this William Randolph Hearst character alone and with all these rooms that he feels like he doesn't deserve, so only hangs in these one or two rooms, that would be genuinely interesting. Him trying to pretend to be a cable guy is really it's stretching.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this goes on because Gary's there talking to him. Gary's the third mic on the show at this point. I don't know if you picked up on that, but at least I was listening to today's episode as well, and Gary's like constantly on the show.
I'm pretty sure it's Stuttering John then, and it's Stuttering John now. He's the third mic, and that's just how it is.
Of course, because I'm me. All I'm thinking about is John would be so pissed if he knew what a major role Gary has on this show now. Basically.
Did you notice there was a hot sauce they promote called Melendez hot sauce?
Was it Melendez? I thought it was something. It wasn't Melendez, was it?
I thought it was. Maybe I was hearing what I want to hear.
Yeah,
I want it to be.
I would have pulled the clip if I had heard that. So this is, again, Gary's explaining to Howard that, it's not just SmartLess. There's a bunch of these podcasts that are getting picked up. And even by SiriusXM, there was another big deal that was made in August.
And then the next thing you know, the thing blows up, and now they've got tons of listeners, and they're getting $100 million deal. I'm like, that makes me look like a schlub. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, what's wrong with me? I had to go from radio market to radio market, toiling away.
Get over it.
Howard, you know who just got a $100 million deal? Travis Kelce and his brother.
Yeah.
I saw that.
$100 million
And then who's the
deal.
woman Sirius just
Call her
hired?
daddy, Alex Cooper. She's good.
Why am I calling her daddy?
That's the name. That's the name of her podcast.
Well, what does that mean, call her daddy?
Wow. What I loved about that is I went, oh, Howard has turned into Bill O'Reilly.
There's no words there. To play us out. What does that mean? To play us out.
It's a video, Sting video.
What is
For credits.
I don't know what that means. To play us out. What does that mean? To end the show?
Yeah.
So SiriusXM just threw $125 million at Alex Cooper from Call Her Daddy. And Howard goes, what does that mean, Call Her Daddy? What is that? What's going on here? And then they have to explain to him, well, I started on Barstool, very popular show, and then I got picked up by Spotify, and now Sirius. But I will say, these deals are getting odd, Adam. When Spotify acquired Joe Rogan and Call Her Daddy, and Dax might have even been one of the podcasts that was picked up by Spotify, it was exclusive deals. Everyone understands an exclusive deal. Howard's just like, so wait, you can still hear these programs anywhere? Yeah, they're still on YouTube. They're still on your podcast app, wherever you want to hear it. And so I think Howard's going, well, then why are we giving them $100 million? What does that do? And honestly, I'm not sure that's a good deal. I don't know what Sirius is thinking. I know Sirius is grasping because they have a technology that's outdated already. They spent billions of dollars to shoot satellites up into space. And I was like, yeah, we don't really need that. Everyone's just got their 5G connection everywhere they go. So it's completely
Again, I think
unnecessary.
Howard understands. I think he gets it. I think he knows they just don't want you to leave the app. If I'm on Spotify, I'm listening to music. If I want to listen to podcasts, instead of going to a different app, they have podcasts now. So I'll stay in Spotify, and that advertising will reach me. He gets that. I think he gets that.
I get that too. I don't know why Sirius. Now you're saying so Sirius has a similar thing where they're going, well, we got to get these podcasts because people are going into their podcast app and then going to Sirius.
So maybe when they're listening to Coffee House 101, when they want to go listen to a podcast, they won't leave. Please don't leave. Just stay and listen to Sirius.
If that's worth $125 million, I know nothing about business.
Well, it's also the elimination of risk. Everyone wants to spend money on something new, but have no risk involved. So no risk involves familiar names, familiar topics, anything we've heard of before, rather than something new.
Right. So I just thought that whole conversation was crazy. That Howard refusing to do a podcast and refusing to acknowledge that most people are listening to podcasts if they're listening to talk shows now, or they're watching them. They're not listening to SiriusXM or AM FM radio. At least that's my perception. I could be wrong about that. I'm always blown away when I hop in an Uber and they're listening to the radio. I'm like, oh, people still exist. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's cool.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's confusing. Is what Howard is saying right now good for Sirius stock or bad for it? I don't understand.
Oh, he seemed like he thought it was bad. Didn't he? He threw a couple jabs at Sirius during this whole conversation.
Oh, yeah, but I mean him talking about this and pointing it out.
Oh.
Isn't good for the stock. Why would he do that?
I didn't think
Why
about
wouldn't he just talk about how brilliant it was and how brilliant SmartLess is and how great to acquire this amazing thing and Sirius is back? That's going to affect his bottom line.
That's a good point. I guess Howard has what you might call fuck you money at this point, so he's not too worried about it. Maybe. All right, so we're back from summer vacation. So many things must have happened over the summer. What happened, Howard? You must have stories. You went to Italy. What happened there?
And, they're all playing licks from Eddie Van.
He went to Guitar Center. This is the story he tells about going to Guitar Center.
And, they're all playing licks from Eddie Van Halen and, Jimi Hendrix and all that shit. And I'm like, I'm going to go in and I play Row, Row, Row Your Boat. But I want to treat myself to a guitar. I work hard.
Okay. Howard saying I work hard on his first show back in months, I thought was a little out of touch. I don't think you should really say that you work hard and that's why you deserve. He was complaining that he had to do work one day in August where he got his own trailer, his own stylist and makeup person in the trailer to just do this one show. And anyway, but he deserves a new guitar. And so he was looking at some these new Gibson guitars called the Gibson Murphy Lab guitar. I wasn't familiar with this. I'm not a Gibson guy. So I looked it up. These are expensive guitars. I buy nice guitars. These are expensive fucking guitars. Holy shit.
I can't picture him in a store.
I know. Isn't that odd? He actually talks about he walked into a store, sat down, tried out different guitars, played the guitars. I think that's why it's such a big deal for him.
Okay.
Like if I went to Guitar Center, which I do often, I would never bring it up on this show. Just seems kind of fucking boring. But to Howard, this is a whole segment of his show was going to Guitar Center.
I'm guessing that he did not show up during business hours and he didn't just like come in off the street with Beth.
That's a great point because, he talks about how all the employees were huddled around him watching him play the guitar. I'm like, well, they would be helping other customers. But You're right. He probably opened special just for him and his stupid $7,000 acoustic.
And in his defense, it's difficult when you're that tall.
Yeah.
It really is. I once went into a cheesecake factory and saw Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sitting there. I'm not a big Kareem fan. You can't help but notice him.
Right.
Everyone has to see him, and then you want to say something. You see Howard in New York or wherever. He's unavoidable.
That's
I almost empathize and kind of get it. He just like, I wanted to buy a guitar. I didn't want to do a personal appearance, which is what would happen if he showed up to a Guitar Center.
Yeah, I do. I have to fight off listeners, too. It does get annoying.
Yeah, because they all want to fight you.
Hey, man, you talked about my podcast. I'll sign autographs later. All right. I'm just trying to look at guitars, but leave me alone.
Oh, here's the ring of your bike in the distance.
You're right. So Howard's talking about how actually I've been checking out this Joe Walsh song, and I've learned how to play it, and I have some insights into how this song was played or composed or something. And so he's teasing this.
I actually was playing some Joe Walsh, but I don't have my guitar down here. I'd have to go upstairs.
There are guitars on the wall. Are they pasted there? Or?
That's for show. I can't play those. Those guitars. For some reason, I have guitars on set. For a guy who doesn't play guitar, I got a lot of guitars around me. Don't ask. I could take a break and then come back with a guitar.
So I'm showing the image right now. This is what Howard's home studio looks like. There are 3 electric guitars directly behind him. He can reach over and grab them. And he's like, I can play you this song, but I got to go upstairs and grab my guitar. Ron was like, wait, there's a guitar right there. Just grab that.
Yeah.
Like, no.
There's an amp behind you.
Yeah, there's an amp and guitars. And that's all those are just props. Because he has played guitar many times on his show. I assumed those are the guitars he grabs when he plays guitar on his show. It was odd. So then he takes a break and he comes back and he goes, I didn't grab the guitar. It's too far. And listen, if I lived in the hotel that he calls a house, I might also be like, maybe on Tuesday I can grab that guitar. I don't have it in me to go get it
when
now.
I'm in that neighborhood.
Right. Yes. I might be swinging by there later in the week. But I just didn't you think that was odd at him? That he was like teasing this whole thing, and then he comes back and he goes, yeah, I had a whole insight with Joe Walsh and stuff, but I didn't get my guitar.
Yeah, these are just for show. It's a set. Yeah. And they probably wouldn't allow him to plug a guitar into an amp next to all that gear. And he doesn't really play those at all. They're not tuned. They might not even be strung. They're just kind of sitting there. And I hope it's not a spoiler. Do you talk about what guitar he ends up buying?
Oh, no, go ahead. I don't have the clip, but I remember what he was talking about, the Elvis
you're
guitar.
A guitar player. You tell me. He settled on a Taylor?
Oh, yeah, he ended up buying a Taylor, which I own a Taylor. They're awesome guitars.
I have one too, but that's
fantastic.
Not a high-end. That's not a Martin. That's not...
Yeah.
You expect him
they
to
make
get.
pretty high-end tailors, but compared to what he was talking about going in there for,
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by that. But the other thing that I know about Guitar Centers, they don't have high-end inventory anymore. They can't afford.
Oh, is that so?
They probably told him, like, oh, this plays just as well as the Gibson you were looking for. That'd be my guess. But then he went back and bought this Elvis guitar. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, I don't know what he was talking about. I've never heard of that.
Me neither. And so I looked that up, and those are decent guitars, but they say Elvis on them, and he made them take that off because he doesn't like Elvis because he ripped off the black man. So Rob was like, yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that.
So I would like to rip off Elvis in the same fashion.
That was all very odd. And then, like I said, he comes back and he's just like, I didn't grab my guitar, so we're not going to do that. Oh, okay. Well, glad we talked about it so much. It's great. Good stuff. There's a whole section at the end. I don't want to talk a lot about it because it's not all that interesting, but all the people who died over the summertime, he does all these tributes for all these different people. And Richard Simmons is the first one he gets into. I'm a big Richard Simmons fan. I loved Richard on the Howard Stern show back in the day. And Gary actually comes in and tells a story that I thought was very funny. He's talking about why Richard stopped going on Scott Shannon's morning show because they were competing in New York. And I guess he was given an ultimatum.
And Gary, tell the story. What did Richard tell you?
So it was like a year and a half later, and he said, and I love using this name because it's so funny. He said, we were in commercial, and he said, I got a call last night from Scott's producer, Anita Benita, and she said, would you come back on the show? And you know what I said? We all leaned in. He goes, I said I would rather eat pussy than go back on that show. And I think you know how much I like doing that. And we caught our breath. We're like, because we know what to say. And he just went,
That laugh.
He had a great laugh.
It's actually a really funny anecdote because Richard Simmons never came out as gay.
Nope.
He always denied it. And they would tease him about it all the time. The fact that behind the scenes he's going, I'd rather eat pussy.
Yeah. Oh, they would tease him to the point of tears.
Oh, for sure.
It's awesome.
Yes.
That's the best part.
He always seemed asexual to me. I didn't think he had any preference at all. And
That's true.
Have there been any stories of any Kevin Spacey-like grumblings of Simmons during those workout tapings?
That's a good point. I mean, first off, he surrounded himself with fat people.
Yeah.
So that tells you he's asexual right there. What kind of work do you want to get to do? I want to work with fat people. Oh, so you don't like boners. Okay. Come with me then, sir. That's a good point. That's very possible. I like that douche the Dabbleverse is calling you out.
He got defensive.
The fuck, this guy talking about Taylor's not high end? My Taylor kicks the shit on nearly every Martin I've ever played.
Fair enough. He's probably right. I'm not trying to start an acoustic guitar war.
I like both my Martin and my Taylor. Just saying. Just saying. All right, so let's find out how the show starts off. He's back. It's been months. We got some energy. Let's go.
I had a really nice 2 months, and I'll be honest, this might come as a shock. I'm really not excited to be back.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not. So, might be a bad show. Might be a lot of anger.
We're saying, are you guys going to be back after Labor Day?
Yeah, we're back.
What? Robin goes, a lot of people have been asking if we're going to be back after Labor. Was she turning into Trump? What do you mean a lot of people are asking that? That's been the schedule all along. Of course you're going to be back after taking a summer vacation. Didn't announce the show was over, so I'm not sure what that's all about. But of course, predictably, Howard's like, I don't even want to be here. I just want to be on vacation. Yeah.
Fans love that shit.
We know. Yeah, right. I know. It's always good to start your show by going, guys, I don't have it in me today. I'm not even interested in doing this. So, near the beginning, we'll fly through this quickly, but I think it's an important element of Stern's show. And one of the reasons why a lot of people stopped listening to him is how political the show got. And Howard's always been a little political. I mean, he did run for governor in New York, but he did it as a bit. And he became the libertarian candidate because that was the one party that would have him. He didn't have libertarian principles or anything like that. So Howard's always been kind of like, I watch Fox News and I vote for Democrats. And, just kind of like he's political, but nothing that a listener would be like, fuck this guy. Oh, since COVID, well, actually since Trump got elected, Howard's gotten very political on the show. And I got to give credit to Robin on this because I think Robin's going like getting a lot of feedback from people going, yeah, I can't listen to Howard anymore. He just, all the Trump stuff. It's too much. But Howard said some really dumb things at the beginning of the show.
And there's a whole bunch of other things to discuss. I mean, politics. I don't want to get too into it because everybody knows how I feel, and 50% of you slam me every time I think you're all insane. But, but people were writing me the whole time. What did you think? I mean, it seems like it happened a year ago, but Biden stepped aside so Kamala Harris could run, and I was all freaked out by that this summer. That really upset me. I almost came back on the air to talk about that because my feeling is, and I know 50% of you don't like this thought, Biden has done an incredible job.
No fucking way!
All right, so that's one opinion. Apparently. Now, of course, Howard recently interviewed Joe Biden. The very famous interview.
Yeah, they were both whispering to each other. It was amazing.
That was great. Joe claimed to have saved like 30 people's lives randomly. One of them, not far from us.
That's true.
Lake Ontario. Just swam out there and saved a guy's life. Very, very incredible. And credible, too, because Joe Biden's never been caught lying before. So Howard goes out there and he goes, I thought I did a great job as president, but I don't think we should talk about this. I know it turns a lot of people off. And he's definitely learned his lesson.
He's done an incredible job. This is I know the maggots are going to get upset with me, but here's the thing.
So he's calling people who like Trump maggots. I know they're going to get upset with me. Well, yeah, you just called them maggots. That seems like you're trying to piss them off. You're actively trying to get them upset with you if you're calling them names like that. Is that a popular thing? You live out in L.A. Is that what they call it? MAGA people now, maggots? Adam?
Never heard it. Yeah,
I was a little surprised at that. I'm like, that's wildly insulting aggressive to 50% of the people out there. Yeah, a little aggressive. So then Howard starts listing Biden's accomplishments. And I was like, oh, okay. I want to hear what this is all about. I think this is the third thing he listed in Biden's accomplishments.
We're out of Afghanistan. Even though people like to, criticize the withdrawal from Afghanistan, to me, it was a beautiful thing. We're no longer there. It makes complete sense.
I'm not saying it's Biden's fault that we botched getting out of Afghanistan. There are a lot of issues with that, starting with George W. Bush putting us there in the first place. But it's one of the most embarrassing things that happened under Joe's watch, and Howard listed it as his third best accomplishment. We literally left all of our military gear for the Taliban and said, all right, see you guys. As well as we left people behind. We're just like, all right, we're out of here. Bye, have fun. And then they took over immediately. I was like, that was pretty botched. I don't know why you would list. You might want to avoid bringing that up if you're praising President Biden. So I think Howard's going on and on. Remember, he started this off going, I don't want to talk about this. It pisses people off. And so Robin is like, yeah, let's wrap it up here.
And so in my book,
I'm glad you're not getting into it.
Yeah, I know. Okay, let me finish this rap and then I'll move on. So I didn't care if they kept Biden's head in a jar. Like he died and they said, well, we can keep him alive, minimally by keeping his head in a jar. I would have voted for the man.
So this is what confuses me about people like this is Howard goes out and Robin even goes, Howard's like, he had that bad night at the debate. And Robin goes, yeah, but what if he was like that every night? And Howard goes, I'd still vote for him. Like, these are the people who are like, we got to have democracy. It's so important. Why? If you're just going to vote for a head in a jar. And he literally says, the country runs itself. Like, yeah, right. So what are we talking about? You're not even understanding the words you're saying, apparently.
It really made me feel sad because you're seeing an older man in the twilight of his life looking at other older men in the twilight of their lives in positions of power going, they're still good. And he ranted about Sumner Redstone, who was still leading Viacom in his 90s and talking about how that was still a good idea. And it's like, well, I can see why you would want to feel that way. But unfortunately, I remember the 90s and how you felt about these kinds of people. And it's very jarring to hear this opposite opinion coming from this same voice.
I'm such an idiot, Adam. I didn't even look at it that way. But you're right. And Robin's also in her 70s. And even Robin, when Howard's going on and on about we let older people be CEOs, they do a great job. Robin's like, not all of them. They want to run these people out in a lot of cases. And Howard was not having that. He's like, no. I mean, they do a great job, but I didn't even think about it through the lens of Howard doesn't want to be irrelevant and unable to do his important job anymore. I think you're right. And actually, speaking of that, Howard brings up grandchildren coming over to his house over the summer. And I stopped listening to Howard 4 years ago, at least regularly. So I don't know how much he talks about grandchildren. I get the sense that it's not brought up all that much because Howard likes to be the young rock and roll guy. But this is hilarious, talking about how the grandkids refer to him.
My granddaughter calls me Zoompa because we used to have a relationship on Zoom during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So that became my name, but my grandson's going to call me Grandpa. I asked my granddaughter, so you want to call me Zoompa or you want to go to Grandpa?
I love that he's called Zoompa because these kids have never been in the same room with him. And when Howard says, well, you know what happened during the pandemic, in Howard's world, the pandemic ended like a month ago. Maybe June was when he decided to actually start leaving the house again. So these kids are just like, can we see Grandpa? No, Grandpa doesn't allow visitors. Grandpa thinks you're going to kill him if you show up at his house.
Grandpa's not as cool as he used to be.
Yeah. Zoompa. That's an embarrassing name.
This was really wild for me because this was right at the top of the show, and I'd never heard him refer to himself as a grandpa, so it definitely made me feel older. And hearing him, because it was a genuinely like lighthearted, slightly engaging morning celebrity show that would be like any kind of, Mario Lopez, Regis Philbin morning show. If that's what you're tuning in for, you're getting it. And I'm listening to it, and he's arguing about whether he wants to be called Grandpa or Pop. And then for some reason, Fred drops in, thank you, mistress, thank you. And I'm like, whoa, what? In the middle of this like morning with Regis and Kelly, somebody's dropping in a ball bash reference from 87 where some guy was having his balls repeatedly hit with a hammer and saying, thank you, mistress, thank you, mistress. It felt like we were being porn bombed. This lighthearted morning fare was suddenly taken to this other place. Like, why are we even still doing that? Just do the morning show.
And that's what you were talking about when we first started up by saying, we don't know what the show is anymore. I don't think Howard knows what the show is anymore because he wants to talk to the president of the United States, and then he also wants to talk about the porn he watched last night and what he jerked off to.
Right.
And, you got those Fred drops like that. So it's like, yeah, pick a lane. Even the celebrities he interviews are mostly celebrities that like a female audience would be interested in. SmartLess is very much targeting a female audience.
And is that what this audience is? I'm assuming that's what it is. It's soccer moms, right?
Yeah, Marianne from Brooklyn.
Right. I mean, she's the one who's really passionate about it. I mean, listen, Bob Dylan, arguably one of the greatest songwriters in the world, spent like 3 years recording and performing only like Sinatra standards.
Yeah.
The greatest songwriter was like, I'm going to croon. A man who is not known for having a crooning voice. But I love Dylan so much. I respect it. I follow it. I go to see it. And then we move on. I don't know. It feels different here. He's not trying to do the folk songs from the 60s disguised as Sinatra.
He's straddling that.
And it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling. Because when I get into this kind of zoned out morning show groove, all of a sudden I get rocked out of it with some kind of reference to what this was. It's interesting.
I like that uncomfortable is a good word to use when listening to Howard, which is why I stopped listening to him. I realized it was making me uncomfortable. Like, I don't enjoy this anymore. I mean, this was during a time that was crazy in the world because I stopped listening in March of 2020, which was COVID and the pandemic. And you had this agoraphobe talking about how everyone's going to die. And I'm like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. This is a bummer. This used to be a fun show.
There's a lot of bands that I love that I don't go see anymore. I'd rather remember how it was and not watch them struggle to perform.
I know. I'm with you on that. Now, the other thing that Howard's been doing for quite a while, ever since they started doing this remotely and doing a Zoom-style show, is there's a knock on the door. Howard lets them in, and it's a person doing a celebrity impression. And they're talking about RFK Jr., so the politics keep going. They're talking about what a crazy person RFK Jr. is. And then, lo and behold, he shows up.
Go play pickleball. Who the fuck is it already? Oh, my God. It's RFK Jr. How embarrassing.
Hey, I heard you were talking about me, but I'm going to tell you how this all started, because there's a lot of confusion. I want to set the record straight. Okay. Years ago, my grandpa, we call him Pop, he lobotomized the family dog.
Is that a good RFK Jr. impression?
No, that's his Mitch McConnell impression.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was going to say, that sounds like someone else.
Yeah, it's this is Mitch McConnell.
Okay. Not a good RFK Jr. And his material also sucks. So eventually, Howard is just like, okay, you got to go now.
Why does it need a head? Because you're being very woke here on your show.
Right.
When you're talking political.
It's a good impression. Do the part where you go,
So Howard's just like, okay, do that impression thing and then get out of here. That's enough of that. That really bombed that whole thing. And then this is surprising. All the equipment they have, all the money that's put into the show. I mean, you got to remember, there's like 70 staff members who put out the Howard Stern show. Nothing has ever happened like this in the history of radio. It's nuts. And for Gary Dell'Abate's mic to be this broken.
Chimp Crazy? Are you watching Chimp Crazy?
I watched a few minutes of one episode, and I wasn't sure I could get through it.
Did you oh, it's on HBO. Sorry, not Netflix.
Yeah.
It's
Actually, it's on Max. It's on Max.
What was that?
It's on Max. That's RFK giving us channel advice.
How'd you get it? RFK, I didn't open the door. How did you get in here? Yeah, he's gone now. It's on HBO. Let me ask you.
Howard, that's my mic. I don't know why it's doing. I don't know why it's doing that. It's
Who
Gary.
is that, Gary?
It's Gary.
Gary, you sound like RFK Jr.
That's my mic. That's my mic.
Or Stephen Hawking. I can't decide who are you.
Maybe because we made fun of RFK Jr. now Gary has turned into RFK Jr. Say something, Gary.
I don't know why I sound like this.
Wow, Howard cannot improv.
No.
That's the other thing that stuck out to me. And there's a lot of writers on the show. I believe Benji Bronk is still sending him jokes live during the show, I would think. And listen to this gem, as I would imagine, because this is a little while after that, this was sent to Howard by Benji or someone else who's writing for him.
You know who he sounds like? Gary 3PO. like a Star Wars creature. Oh, wait till Gary's mic is working. I'm going to fucking rip him a new one. For those of you who are fans of me yelling at Gary, I'm going to be yelling at Gary later in the show.
Gary 3PO, like a Star Wars creature. What?
Lotus Notes, page 2.
Yeah, right. Gary in blue.
I like how he teases that he's going to yell at him.
Yeah.
Wow.
I plan on being angry and disappointed a little later.
So let's get into that, because this is, I would call this the crux of the episode. And they talked about it again today. This is the big deal that's going on right now with Howard's return. All the things that happened. I guess he talked about Italy today. He didn't talk about Italy yesterday when he came back. I guess he talked about it today. He's like, yeah, it was fun. Okay. So instead of talking about Italy, he's going to go into this thing that Gary did that really pissed him off.
I'm not being a bitch. But this is crazy, and you're going to think it's crazy, Robin. And if you don't think it's crazy, feel free to tell me I'm out of line.
Okay.
So here's what happened. I was going to save this for later in the show, but fuck it. Who cares? Gary's here. He's giving me that big smile.
RFK came on, and you had
Yeah. And if anyone in the audience thinks I'm out of line, well, fine.
Will you at some point give me a moment after you say what you say to at least react?
I love that Gary still doesn't know how the show works. Hey, can I respond to what you say? And Howard even says, like, yeah, take your time. Well, you want to dissect that?
I just let you ask that question, so yeah.
Yeah, what is Gary thinking? Asking that question. But
I think he's deviating from the script.
So
Gary. He's
Gary.
got to remind everyone. Howard, you just said it. Howard's reaction time is so slow. When something's not in the script, he's like, what? I need a full explanation of that sound. Nothing just happens. He's reading this script. So can I just ask a question? What? Oh, where are we going to fit that? Wilding's about to speak. Okay, maybe you can, Gary. We'll see.
I like that Adam's here. He picks up on things that I do not. And that's a brilliant point. There's another thing. I played it on Drew's show yesterday. I decided not to play it on here. But Howard hits the dump button at a certain point out of nowhere.
Wild.
I've never heard him do that before. On Sirius. On a satellite radio, it's like you can swear and say whatever you want. And they're talking about the SmartLess show. And all of a sudden just like cuts and he goes, I just had to hit the dump button. Anyway, it's like, whoa. Who said what? What's going on?
My theory is that he started talking about someone being near him and Beth that Beth didn't want to see, and it was a social thing, so Gary had to step in, and then suddenly it was dumped and we were on to something else.
Yeah, because they were talking about the celebrities who were there at the time, and I bet he said he slipped up or someone said something they did not want his celebrity buddies to hear.
I promise you, whatever it is he dumped would have been the most interesting part of the show.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I'm mostly interested in that right now.
I certainly agree with that. So we're going to get into this thing that Gary did that was the biggest segment on the show and still a big deal in today's show. I'm sure it'll be the rest of the week, which is, by the way, just one more day. Well, actually, no, the week's probably over for them. They don't do Thursday shows anymore. So I sound like Monique. Whatever, who cares? Do your whatever schedule you want, Howard. I don't care. It's fine.
I genuinely don't think that I am the reason that what happened.
Even my wife says to me, "Are you going to pick on Gary about this?" And I was expecting her to go, give Gary a break. He's such a great guy, because she loves Gary. And
yeah,
I go, no. I said, of course I'm going to bust Gary's balls on this because he fucks me every time. And she goes, good, because she even felt fucked over by what Gary did.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so he's building this up. There's a giant buildup going on, and I'm just playing these couple little clips. This goes on for 10 minutes, where he's just like, Rob, you're not going to believe this. This is the craziest thing. Beth says it's crazy. Everyone thinks it's crazy. Wait until I tell you this thing. Gary's going, all right, you've told everyone this is crazy long enough. Can we just get to the thing? Because Howard's trying to plant the seed, obviously, that when he says this, you're going to be like, that is crazy. You keep saying that over and over again. So are you ready for this bombshell, Producer Chris? You haven't heard this yet.
No.
Okay. I'll be watching for the reaction on your face when you hear what.
Is it okay if I react after you?
Yeah, no, definitely not. Did I share my notes with you?
I don't have that here. I don't have that.
Yeah,
I don't have my script.
Was there rewrites? What's going on?
This is so horrible. I got an invite to John Hines' daughter's wedding. And I blew my fucking stack. I was just like, what the fuck is with John Hines?
And we just point this out for people who, I forget not everyone knows Howard Stern and Howard Stern Show. John Hines invented Jump the Shark. He was the one who coined that phrase. He had jumptheshark.com. He sold it for like $1 million. And he's been on the Howard Stern Show for 30 years.
He coined the frame.
Did I say frame?
No, that's what John said. Your guy who coined the frame.
Okay. I speak so horribly, I'm always assuming that I did something wrong.
No, you were great. Sorry.
Not this time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just see in the chat people are writing exact chi and shit. I'm like, fuck, am I doing it again? I'm sure I am. So John Hines has been working on the Stern Show for a long time. And from what I've heard, all of these celebrity interviews that Howard's always praising himself for, John Hines is the one who's doing the research and writing the questions. So John and Howard have a very close relationship. Okay, and you just heard he got an invitation to John's daughter's wedding.
His daughter's wedding. I didn't invite John Hines to any of my daughter's weddings. To me, John Hines knows I'm not going to his daughter's wedding. And this is just, they know I send nice gifts. I always send cash because I'm not going on your registry and looking
you
for
pay
gifts.
not to go, yes.
Yeah, I'll pay whatever it takes. And they all know that I paid Steve Nowicki a fortune. You know what I mean? And whoever else got me. Ronnie, I'm like making charitable donations in Ronnie's name and sending checks. And it's basically John Hines sending me a check request for his daughter. And quite frankly, we pay John enough.
Okay. So this is what Howard's beef is. Remember who he's mad at?
Gary
Dell'Abate. Because John Hines sent him an invite to his daughter's wedding, and Howard sees that as, I don't go to things. Which, by the way, John Hines should know that. And so the fact that Howard would get an invite, now it's just on him to send money because he was invited and he's not going to go. And he's blaming this on Gary because apparently John Hein was asking everyone at Sirius if he should do this or not. And Gary was the one guy who's just like, I don't know if it was me, I would do it. And Gary's relationship with Howard is different than everybody else's.
Sure.
So Gary would do that. Gary's kids have been on the show. They've been featured on the Howard Stern show. It would make more sense. John Hein, probably not so much. But if I'm hearing this, and listen, let's get into it because this is the most important part of the Howard Stern show. So I'm going to pretend this is interesting. If I'm Howard, I'm not pissed at Gary. I'm pissed at John Hein for doing this because it does seem like a money grab.
But fans would rather have him be pissed at Gary.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
That the angle he has to take because he doesn't yell at John Hein.
Well, he's not making great decisions these days. So
right.
I think that is the angle that he's taken.
Okay.
That's the legendary bit. That's the Willie Nelson on the road again. Howard's making fun of Gary. They're doing the bit.
Wow. So he has to do this stretch to be like, it's Gary's fault that this happened. And so this is him explaining that.
He asked Gary, and Gary goes, of course you should invite my boss.
Okay, so that's just not
John,
true.
hold on.
Just
I'll
not
allow
true.
you to rebut.
That's not true. Marcy Turk is his boss.
I'll allow you to rebut. John ignores everyone else and listens to Gary, even though he knows Gary doesn't know who I am and what I want, and sent me the invitation. And at first I was mad at John, but then when I heard the story, I went, well, Gary gave him the answer he needed. Gave him the green light.
Well, you heard the story incorrectly.
So Gary says this is not true. And so he wants to give his side of this story.
I didn't do that, Robin. That's the whole point.
Gary,
That's
let
not
me
what
ask you something. I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Forget the story, whether I have it right or wrong. Do you think John Hein should have invited me to his daughter's wedding?
I think that was John's decision to make.
Okay.
Oh,
But
so
do
you don't
what
have
do
an
you think?
opinion on it.
What is your opinion? Do you think it would be a good idea or a bad idea?
I think it's a no-win situation, Howard. You think it is?
Really?
Because I think that if you don't get an
You don't
invitation,
know me.
hold on. If you don't get an invitation, you get in the
Right.
air. You go fucking John Hein. If it wasn't
No,
for
I
me,
don't.
Oh, let me finish. Let me finish.
crazy.
That's a lie.
If it weren't for me, he couldn't even throw a wedding. He invited Robin.
Wrong
he invited
answer.
Fred. How the fuck
Wrong
does he
answer.
not invite me? I think
Wrong
it's a no-win
answer.
situation for. Okay,
That's
you,
bullshit.
You just asked me a question.
All right. Tell me your
That is
version.
your opinion.
I do have to, I'm pausing it real quick. I do have to say, that's really dumb. Howard would never come on the air and complain about not getting an invite to an employee's daughter's wedding. And the fact that Gary says that, like, yeah, it's a no-win situation, you're going to complain about it one way or the other, I disagree with completely. I don't know why Gary thought that was the case. It seemed odd to me. That was his angle on it. So at first I'm like, oh, fuck you, Howard. You're always mad. Then I'm like, oh, Gary's an idiot. Gary's actually not making a lot of good points right now.
Here's John Hein.
John said to me, if it were you, what would you do? And I said, for me, I'm in a different situation than you.
How so?
Because I've known you longer.
Oh, that's right. I like John better than you. I forgot. Right.
I said, so if it were me, I would. And then I said, are you inviting Robin? He said, yes. Are you inviting Fred? Yes. And I said, well, that's going to be yours to deal with on the air. Then if you do or don't, you're going to deal with it one way or the other.
You're claiming you did not give him the answer to invite me.
Did I say, John, you have to invite Howard? Are you asking me if I said you have to? I'm asking you.
So Gary's asking Howard this, but John's also now in the Zoom call, and everyone's confused about who he's asking. So now John Hein finally gets involved in this situation that has everything to do with John Hein and pretty much nothing to do with anyone else.
I was on as you explained, and I've got you and Beth down as a no, by the way.
Thank you.
I was on the fence about it.
But now I have to send a gift, don't I?
You don't have to send a gift.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
No, you don't.
Thanks to Gary, I do.
You don't have to. But
what do you want? Just give me a number and I'll send it. Seriously.
I'm not giving you a number.
I take the mystery out of it.
We literally predicted this is not
not giving you a number.
Okay. So Gary's still incorrect about this. We predicted this would be the conversation. No, you didn't. Because that's not what Howard's arguing with you. He's saying, I don't want to get... It's a very easy rule, and Howard explains this.
I tell you what, Gary, here's a rule. Any question you receive where it starts with, should I invite Howard? The answer is no. After you hear the word invite, you quickly blurt out no. No.
But shouldn't John Hine know that?
Probably.
Yes. I don't understand why this is on Gary. If everyone else said no, and Gary's just like, I don't know, I would. And then Howard's mad at Gary over it. It all seems ridiculous. And I know what you guys are saying. Playing the greatest hits. This is Gary getting berated by Howard. So people want to hear. But I have to say, Gary actually brings up a good point. My last clip I'm going to play about this. Because Howard's been seeing a shrink for how many decades now? More than I've been alive. And it's odd the way that Howard processes this type of information.
And now I'm stuck.
Gary,
and I have to send a gift.
Gary,
and now because I've done it on the air, I got to send even more money than I normally would send.
I shouldn't have done it
See,
on the
this
air.
is costing you. The more you talk,
want to know
it's
something?
costing you more.
And if I could blink and send this kid the money, I would just do it. Now, you know what it is? It's like you got to sit there and fill out a fucking check and put in an envelope and write, hey, kids, have a great marriage and all this bullshit.
Go to the post office.
I don't want to do
I know, it's turning into Senator John. By the way, Beth will do all of these things for you, Howard. It's not a big deal.
Do it. Fucking Gary, you send a gift in my name.
Sure.
How's that?
Fine.
That's the penalty. That's what they should penalize this
I don't
guy.
mind.
Then he'll stop
But
doing it.
send
Good.
what Howard would send.
Yeah, I want you to send minimally $5,000 to John Hine's daughter.
You're
in my
not
name.
sending $5,000
Yeah.
to anybody's
yeah.
wedding.
Yeah, sure.
And you shouldn't.
Why are you not protective of me? Do you hate me that much? I've given you a living.
See,
You've
that's all-
supported your family off of my talent. Why the fuck can't you protect me one time? That's all I want.
Supported your family off of my talent is a doozy. And I get it. This is Howard's bravado. This is what he does. But that's an embarrassing thing to say to someone who works for you. I don't know.
Howard let something slip in a little bit.
Okay, I'll keep it playing. I have a little bit more to go on.
Oh, so
this.
sorry. Go.
No, not at all. I paused it for that reason. Is Howard says these things that show who he really is. And you're like, oh, that makes you like an awful person. He's mad at Will Arnett for being successful without being in Connecticut and doing radio at Hartford. And he's mad at Gary for having a nice house and a loving family when Gary's worked for him. It's like this. Why are you upset about any of these things? There's nothing to do with you.
Want the answer? Yes or no? Why can't you?
I hate the idea that you, and I do believe that you go to your shrink and you have a conversation where you go, Gary hates
I haven't
me.
seen my shrink in a month.
But I'm
That's
saying-
the problem,
I'm saying
too.
Your premise is Gary hates me, and it is not done out of hate. It is done out
I
of
think you
love.
hate me.
I don't hate
think you hate me. I think
I
you
love
resent me. I don't think so.
I love you. And
That's
I
not
don't-
love.
Why would I resent you? And how is this? What's
I'll
my
tell you why.
What's my benefit?
Because you know it's going to be a pain in my ass.
Was that the part that you were talking about, Adam?
No, but similarly, he lets something slip. He says, Gary starts asking him about, did you have any personal friends at your daughter's wedding? And he says, well, yeah, I had Dr. Lou, but that's because I know him from before.
Oh.
Which is not a phrase I'd ever heard him use,
From
but I have
before.
heard famous people only use. And it really was very telling about how he views his life and his relationships. Lou, he knows from before he was famous. So
Right.
that's a different thing. You don't get to criticize that, Gary.
Real friends and fake friends is how they're being categorized. I just thought it was interesting that he's talking about, now you're going to go to your shrink and say, Gary hates me. And Gary doesn't think like Howard. He's not trying to sabotage him. He's not setting a booby trap for Howard. He's just like, yeah, send him an invite. I would if it was my kid. You know, crazy thing to say. He must hate Howard. And so you got to wonder what these conversations are with the shrink. If Howard's going there and going, yeah, Gary Dell'Abate hates me and he's trying to sabotage me. Like, does the shrink not give a fuck, not understand the dynamics, buying this? How is Howard not getting better?
I don't.
It's weird.
I don't pretend to know, but
Right.
I'm guessing that Howard's not going in there talking about Gary at all, and that Howard's filling time with this bullshit.
Yeah.
That it's not a real beef.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
no,
exactly
you're,
right.
You're right about that. That's a good point. So let's get off it. Let's get on to something more fun, and that is the fact that Crazy Alice died today. Oh, wait, that's not fun at all. But it is, because they did pay her tribute on the show today. And if you don't know who Crazy Alice is, She's a whack packer. I sent Shuley my condolences, one of Shuley's buddies, and this is a little crazy Alice.
But she told us her anger felt like having an upset stomach. It just needed to come out. And she would yell at anyone. She would yell at me. She'd yell at Robin. She'd yell at the callers. You name it. Just for those of you who are not familiar with Angry Alice, here is a beautiful montage of some of the angrier moments.
You ugly son of a bitch. You are so ugly. I bet you're an ignorant chicken neck, short, peanut, ugly MF.
Yo, that's fucking the hell. I hate a fucking cocksucker, you fucking lesbian black monkey. You ain't got no man.
You shut up, you bitch. Shut up, bitch. And go home and suck on your mama's nibble. Next time you see a bitch, look at your mama.
Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Do you dream about him pumping in your stinking butt, you dumbass bastard?
Fuck that fucking the hell.
Your mom is a bitch. Your bitches, your bitches.
I will a ducky cocksucker.
That was her catchphrase right there at the end. But so it was always Crazy Alice, and they changed her name to Angry Alice. And I believe, and Adam, you probably know the answer to this, I believe it's because Alice didn't like being called crazy.
Sounds about right.
I think Alice was just like, I'm not crazy, I'm just mad at everyone. Like, oh.
I never met anyone who was crazy who enjoyed being called crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Good point.
That would seem like it'd be offensive. So I remember Fez Whatley took offense to people calling him crazy.
Most of my exes.
Yes, that's a good point. So I just have one more clip on here. Do you remember Crazy Alice?
I do, and I'm so confused. Who is this show for? I don't understand. Was that clip he just played supposed to be for the same audience that's invested in the pop discussion? Are these one person that wants to hear all of this?
Right. That's what's so odd about the fact that Howard won't talk about the Dabbleverse. You have this very interesting thing that's happening that Howard and Fred and Robin and Gary would have all this insight into. Like if they brought up Stuttering John and what he's doing right now, everyone would be trying to get in there like, oh, yeah. Let me talk about you about this. Let me talk to you about that. Have you guys seen Sheet Shitterson's video? Have you guys seen this thing? Like, I know they're all paying attention. And the fact, like, if this is still people who care about Crazy Alice passing away, why isn't Stuttering John mentioned on this show?
Do you remember when Mr. Burns went to the doctor and they were like, wow, you have all of the diseases.
Every disease.
Right.
Yeah.
So think of that as Howard's past.
Even hysterical
and it's
pregnancy?
all like ready to pop. And one little wrong thing that goes through and this avalanche of everything he's done in the past, he will have to answer for. And we see the little, it sparks, then it dies. It sparks, it goes viral, then it dies. And he managed to keep the contract, keep the gig. If he can just ride this out, without any of that coming up, he'll be safe. So he'll never let the Dabbleverse in because then it'll have to own all of this stuff that was his career with John and those people.
Yeah, when Cardiff called in and asked about Stuttering John, and Howard just goes, hangs up, is just like, oh, it must be one of Stuttering John's buddies or something. It's like, nope. You know that's not what it is. But you're right, Adam. That's what it comes down to, is that Howard was in blackface. Howard did use the N-word. All the things that all of his liberal friends in Hollywood would need to shun, it would keep him out of his A-list celebrity category that he's in now. He has to pretend never happened and try to rewrite history.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the things that Imus did that suck, and I'm not an Imus fan in any way, did Imus ever run from his past and pretend to be someone different by the end of his career? I don't think so. I think he stayed kind of the same.
What happened after that little incident where he called those basketball players something? Did he try and change his act after that?
I don't know. I think he got a deal with Fox News after that.
There you go. Yeah. That's how that works.
They're like, nappy-headed hose. How about $20 million a year? Get over here. All right. So I have just one more clip. Because lest anyone think that Howard was just fucking off all summer long and not doing work.
Oh, yeah. Lest anyone think we fucked off all summer, this is not the case. You could tell from the quality of the program today.
I thought that was hilarious. He wrapped it up with, you can tell by the quality of the program today, where I pretended to be mad at Gary for an hour and a half. And I went to Guitar Center. That obviously we were bringing it and working on it all summer long. Anything else you want to mention about this, Adam? Anything I missed that you wanted to bring up?
Only that it was very clear that all of the callers were actors reading from a script.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm positive on. However, I know Cardiff got through, and I have a friend from high school that I heard a couple years ago get through. I recognized her voice and her name, so I know real calls are possible, but all of the ones we heard were scripted. They were all actors. They were all... And the first line was like, I've been a long-time listener. I've only listened for a little bit. They always have to quantify exactly what demographic they are before they even speak. It's very rehearsed.
Yeah, and I talked about how the staff is like 70 people or something. They're all coming from the back office.
Oh, yeah, there was someone from South Carolina with a New York accent.
Go figure. I wonder how that happens. So, yeah, the show was definitely scripted. I think Cardiff got in because he lied about what he was going to talk about. It was something very much on
I was
point.
shocked they're even taking calls and looking to see what they want to talk about.
Yeah.
But it is happening, so it is possible for people out there to call in and get something about John through. I would love him to be just forced to answer to any of this. It'd be wonderful.
I'm also looking forward to the day that Howard does eventually retire. I think his contract's through 2025. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. But let's say, he doesn't have his agent anymore and Howard just decides like, all right, I can't negotiate any more deals. I'm done. Where do Richard and Sal and Chris Wilding and all of these guys land? Because I think they're going to be on the Uncle Rico show and WATP, probably Cardiff Electric show. I mean, there was a drop that we played that went by pretty quickly of Wendy the Retard. I'm like, oh, I know her from Tukey Soup. It's like these people, even High Pitch Eric was at DabbleCon.
Yeah.
Like, these people can't wait to get into this new universe that's like
relevant.
Post Howard Stern relevancy. Yeah. So I can only imagine like if Richard and Sal broke off and we started doing a show,
I'd be okay with it.
I'd be fine with that.
It would be amazing.
Yeah. Maybe instead of pranking Tradio, they can just call it the Stuttering John show. Prank John. I'll give him John's number and they can just call him. That'd be funny.
Who are these podcasts?